That's always, yeah, it's always been the case. Nukes are a breakthrough weapon, and this is a tactic that was discussed historically. If the U.S. ever attacked the Soviets in the Cold War, were attacked, we always framed it as we'll be attacked, but then realistically, it would have been the United States attacking, and the politicians knew it. So the war plans are always supposedly about defending, but really they were about attacking and then defending in Europe, while the U.S. hoped to get either China on our side or to launch aerial bombardment. So we'd launch the war by bombing them and then defend against Soviet ground forces. Most likely a war would have started either with a bombing campaign or a battle at sea, either one of which the Americans would have wiped the Soviets with, the four of the Soviets. American aircraft were better than MiGs, but the MiGs were extremely cost effective. So, America might have had a hard time in a prolonged air war of attrition if we didn't wipe out the Soviets' ability to replace the MiGs, because MiGs were very, very, very cost effective. Like, they cost... There are inflated figures and modern ones are far more expensive, but the Soviet military industrial complex was extremely efficient. They could produce MiGs at probably 5 to 10 times the rate for the same amount of industrial machinery as the US. Of course, they had fewer factories producing them than America. Like, think of it as higher production efficiency, but fewer mills to dedicate. Still, in a prolonged air war, the US would have been in trouble. But the US had excellent first strike aircraft like stealth bombers. So it didn't have a prayer of... Basically, the US was going to rely on nuking the Soviets to wipe out their industry, protecting against the Soviet counterattack into Western Germany, which we always framed as unprovoked Soviet aggression and war plans, but really it would have been a nuclear first strike, and then a protection against a counterattack, assuming it wasn't a total nuclear war, a limited nuclear first strike with presumably some Soviet nuclear retaliation. If it went to an all-out thermonuclear war, the war was over. So the American leadership was playing like, we'll nuke them twice, and they won't retaliate any worse. It'll be a tit for tat. Of course, that's not necessarily true. It was insane. There are also famous propaganda posters. If we get nuked, not everyone dies. And there were like diagrams of if New York City gets nuked, how far from the city you have to be to not die. It's like, 100 kilometers away, you'll be alive. So it's like, great, a city of 10 million people or something? God, how many are there? 2 million in New York City? It's not 10. That's like a super city like Beijing. It's like a city of how many million people is going to get glassed? But sure, there'll still be people alive like out in Yonkers or something. So therefore, we should engage in nuclear war. It's oh god, this was in the 50s and early 60s. There was this propaganda campaign. It was ultimately funded by the CIA. Yes, nukes don't kill civilians in Hearts Iron 4 because they don't want to stimulate war crimes. And nuking civilians is a war crime. And yes, that means the United States was guilty of war crimes when it nuked Japan. That is true. Alright. Let's change these to advanced fighter bombers. These are my most important aircraft, so they'll get top priority resource. Top resource priority. Priority resource, my brain's not working great anymore. My long COVID. Yeah, I hate Truman, if you guys haven't figured out. I talk about him over and over and over in my streams. Henry Truman, he was not supposed to be president of the United States. The Democratic Party rigged the 1944 convention against Henry Agrid Wallace, a native of, I think, Indiana, to the left of FDR. He was more left-wing than FDR was. He was in favor of friendship with the Soviet Union. There would have never been a Cold War, and if there hadn't been a Cold War, the U.S. wouldn't have been able to get away with, I kid you not, 9 genocides during and after the Cold War, which were all, or almost all, in the name of anti-communism. Let's see. Indonesia was anti-communism. East Timor was anti-communism. Bangladesh was anti-communism. Congo 1 was anti-communism, but Congo 2 was not. So that one was not. Guatemala was supposedly anti-communism, although it was more genocide of the natives. Cambodia was sort of weird anti-communism because the CIA was supporting a guy who Pol Pot claimed he was a communist, but the CIA knew he wasn't really, and then he eventually stopped pretending to be a communist, and it was to gain influence so that they didn't side with the Soviet Union, so that was anti-communism. There's another genocide I'm forgetting. Yemen. That was revenge for communism, sort of. The groups that we were bombarding were groups that were more loyal to the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Revenge for communism, but these were no longer communists. And that was more about Israel-Palestine, which has been an ongoing genocide. Yeah, the U.S. has committed 9 genocides since the end of World War II. 9, maybe 10, or 11. I forget if I included Israel-Palestine in that count. I don't think I did, because too many people dispute it. I just went with the ones that are uncontroversial. And there's one even more controversial than Israel-Palestine. That's the air war against North Korea during the Korean War. That's even more controversial than calling Israel-Palestine a genocide, but there are leading academics who think it was. So 9 to 11 genocides since the end of World War II. And we wonder why people hate us around the world. And we fund freaking Islamist fundamentalism in Saudi Arabia. And then we got 9/11 because of the Bitter Lake Accords, because we allied with the Saudi Arabians and they're monsters. I mean, they took one of our journalists and cut them up in an embassy basement. They're not good guys. But we still ally with them because of oil. And because of, it's not really about, the U.S. doesn't need the oil itself. It's forcing everyone to trade in for oil in U.S. dollars. It's about the petrodollar, which is about taxing the whole world. Hey, did you leave, Max Power? I'm sorry if this was too much. I got on another gripe about Henry Truman. He was a piece of shit. I do not like him. Or did you go to look stuff up? I don't know. You still here? Oh, the other person left. Okay, you're still here. That's crazy, but will be more for sure. Oh, genocides, yes. Unfortunately, we live in a very dark world. This is like the bad alt history. This is why I try to stop the US from becoming the global world power in Hearts Iron, usually, now. Or the Nazis, because that would be worse, obviously. Generally, fascist rule in the world is always worse than the world we live in. But some other power, ideally a communist one. I am a democratic socialist. I don't like capitalism one bit. I was trying to become a physician, and I saw the horrible ways that capitalism sinks its claws into the healthcare system, the for-profit healthcare system in the United States, and throws away human lives for profit. And I learned about how housing, and homelessness and the oppression of the police. I mean, the police oppressing people, especially minorities and the homeless. Trying to become a doctor, you often do volunteering with the homeless. And I heard stories of things like people putting broken glass in sandwiches they gave to homeless people. And I'm like, oh my God. And then I learned about the police beating and harassing and tearing down homeless encampments, which I had not known growing up as a middle-class American occurred. And just the more I learned about capitalism and these things, people don't realize they do the capitalism, but they are. They're about keeping people down and exploited so that they make cheap labor for their employers. Social uplift. Social democracy is actually not good for capitalism in terms of not good for the profits of capitalists. Like what Norway, Sweden, and Denmark do is not good for the billionaires, and so the billionaires are trying to tear apart the social democracies in Norway, Sweden, Finland, in our own world. They're slowly undermining it, starting with Sweden, which is one of the things I'm not fond of Paradox, because they tend to side with that. They have fairly right-wing views. I'm like, you realize your country is the linchpin of the last resistance against right-wing capitalism on Earth. Once Sweden goes, Norway, Finland, and Denmark will all follow. The social democratic project is slowly being erased in Sweden and it's partly due to billionaires in Sweden. It's partly due to billionaires from other countries who are doing things like propaganda media campaigns and just influencing the global opinion, which seeps into Sweden intentionally, influencing it around the world so that everyone goes pro-rah-rah neoliberal capitalism. That is capitalism that cuts welfare spending and stuff. At least the powerful interests do. A lot of ordinary people are pissed about it, but their opinion doesn't matter because elections are controlled by billionaires. They don't care what you think except when it comes time to vote, and then they'll just bombard enough stupid old people with political ads that convince them to vote, and they don't care what, like, young people don't go to the polls, and the old people who probably shouldn't be allowed to vote because they're too old and they're too easily fooled, they get scared into voting for the right wing by ads. That's how ads buy campaigns. It's not really, well, it's partly that and partly on the ground presence, which costs money, which the billionaires can give tons of money, and then the party machinery. It's much more complicated than just political spending. There's a lot of, it buys ads. There's a lot of pieces of the puzzle of how billionaires control elections. It's not simple, and they certainly don't stuff ballot boxes. That would be stupid, and they don't do it, generally speaking. But they do, in fact, control the elections through things like owning the newspapers, and the newspapers control public opinion. And this has been known forever. Karl Marx wrote about this. Vladimir Lenin wrote about this. How this was true before the Soviet Union went communist. This has been Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht, who were both murdered by the Social Democratic Party of Germany, because Social Democrats, despite being bad for capitalism, often still side with capitalism when the socialists come around. They all wrote about how these things, about how the media is owned by billionaires and the media does not cover things fairly, and how the education system doesn't really exist, especially in certain countries like the United States, to train good citizens. It exists to make obedient citizens. U.S. politics are a mess, Max. They are an absolute mess. But the whole world is turning into the United States, so it's worth understanding. Give me a second to... Let's see. This was going to be another... It's going to turn everything to fighter bombers, because... Right, I'm just thinking, how many fighter bombers do I want? How many trainers do I want? How many... do I want any pure fighters? Possibly not. I'm not going to win the air war against the United States. The problem is this means cutting off the Soviets from fighter reinforcements. And they're still trying to win the air war. Alright, I've got 3 lines of these. Maybe I'm naive to think... Maybe I'm wrong to think it's impossible to win the air war. The Soviets seem to be doing it, despite my saying they can't do it. Oh, they outnumber the American Air Force 2-1. Take back what I said about this being impossible. They already have green air over the Baltics. That's local air superiority. They probably still have fewer aircraft overall, but I looked at the Soviet military count. It's insane. It's like 200 factories or something nuts. Yeah, it's around 200, maybe 180. They don't have the resources for it, but they do have a lot of resources. And they're getting more with every country they occupy. That I flip communist and joins the UK faction, then they occupy it. They did Ukraine, they're working on Crimea. Kazakhstan has some resources. They're actually going to win through sheer numbers and attrition against the US, if nothing else. And they are building them, improving the quality of their troops the longer the war goes on. Alright, well, my own pilots, these fighter bombers have amazing stats, and they trade well with fighters when they do get attacked. Let's see. Still, I need more numbers. These are the most advanced fighters I got. Alright. need some non-strategic. What? Why did it not? Alright, I want the naming to just be Advanced Fighter Mark 8. I'll give them some pure fighters. But they need to be non-strategic so I can produce more. So I can actually invest in my own industry. Anti-air defenses, I may need to cut back on what I've got planned. If the war's going this well already, it's better to push the advantage. Anyways, I'm from Mexico, so maybe even worse. Yeah, I know Mexican politics aren't the cleanest either. They can be messy. The media there is pretty well controlled by rich people too, but not as bad as in the U.S. There are still some small independent newspapers in Mexico, as I understand it. Most of those have been bought up by very rich people. That's one of the problems. But the biggest problem the U.S. has is it's a two-party system. And the two parties have been around forever. The Democratic Party has been around since pretty much the establishment of the United States. The Republican Party is... The U.S. has always had one party that survived since the beginning, the Democrats, which are originally called the Democratic Republicans, which originated from... Actually, so the U.S. first had the Federalists and Anti-Federalists. The Federalists supposedly won the battle. Well, they did. They won the battle for a strong federal republic, strong central government. But they became deeply unpopular in doing so because John Adams basically went full-on authoritarianism, almost fascist, with censoring the media, the Alien and Sedition Acts. He basically locked up people who didn't agree with him, allowed armed gangs to beat them, tried to close down newspapers, deported immigrants. All the stuff that's happening now, it happened in like 1802. This is the second time this has happened in the United States. And so the Federalist Party dissolved. It became deeply unpopular to call yourself a Federalist. And Anti-Federalists were never really a party. They were kind of they never believed in organization or structure to that degree quite the same way. So they're never really a party. And most of the Anti-Federalists joined the Democratic Republican Party, which was anti-strong government, but they also became pro-slavery, which was the big difference in the Anti-Federalists, who tended to be anti-slavery a lot more. So it absorbed some of the weak government platform of the Anti-Federalists, but it was pro-slavery, and that made sense because the strong central government was starting to become a danger to slavery. So the Democratic Republicans then became the main party for a while, and the Whigs became the descendants of the Federalists. And they were usually the less popular party, but because they were anti-slavery, they still managed to obtain decent amounts of popular support in the northern states. Like places like Massachusetts often voted for the Whigs. But the Whigs became weaker and weaker and weaker spined about actually ending slavery, and they were losing their support in places like New York and Massachusetts. They were sometimes even at risk of losing those states to the Democratic Republicans, because the people who were really strongly anti-slavery in those states just weren't turning out because they were feckless, just like the Democrats are today. The Whigs were back then. And so then the Republican Party formed out of the ashes, the Whig Party. And then pretty much right around the Republican Party formed, and very soon thereafter the U.S. Civil War broke out. The Republicans became very anti-slavery, and they became the left-wing party in America, absorbing much of the more left-wing politics of the Whigs, but with some of the ideas of the Democratic Republicans. Every time a new party forms in America, the two parties both shift. Now, mind you, the Democrats have been around this whole time, ever since their formation, right after the Federalist Anti-Federalist stuff. The Republicans and Democrats then exist, and they continue to evolve, and eventually they swap. The Republicans are the more left-wing party as far up until Theodore Roosevelt. Then Taft comes along. He betrays the Republican left-wing principles. He's deeply corrupt. This leads to the Roaring Twenties, to the Gilded Age, to people like Cooling and Harding, who called themselves Republicans, but they were more like today's Republicans. They were corrupt, they were pro-business, they were anti-working class. And the Democrats started to move to the left to fill in the vacuum left by the Republicans moving to the right. FDR is, of course, very left-wing for the Democrats of his era. And then his vice president, Henry Agwood Wallace, who I love, I've read about him. He was a really great guy. He was the vice president of FDR in 1940 to 44. He was actually Secretary of Agriculture, I think, until from 36 to 40, or maybe 34 or something. He started as the Secretary of Agriculture, then he became the Vice President of the United States, and then he should have become the President of the United States because he should have continued on as Vice President in 1944, but the Democratic Party bosses, the old conservative ones who had been pro-Jim Crow segregation, they rate the party convention. At the same time all this is going on, there's these things called party machines that exist, and they engage in ballot stuffing, voter intimidation, voter roll purges, all the stuff that either occurs today, like intimidation of voters still occurs today, or things that don't occur today but people like to claim do, like nobody stuffs ballots except in an occasional mayor race. Trump tried to claim that there was ballot stuffing in the 2020 elections, and he was lying out of his rear. It did not happen then. But the Democrats used to do that stuff all the time back in like Tammany Hall machine, and these kind of practices continue at least until the progressive era, until Theodore Roosevelt passes reforms that help prevent things like this from happening anymore. So instead, because they can't stuff ballots anymore and they can't bribe people, the elites switch to buying up the newspapers, and you get the era of yellow journalism, you get Hearst, you get corporate media that starts to evolve in the United States, and it controls everything eventually. We live in an era where media define reality. There's this excellent book, and I'm not going to talk about this anymore because most viewers on YouTube aren't here just to hear me say this, but I'm going to say you need to read this book. It's called Inventing Reality. It's by Michael Parenti. Yes, he is a Marxist. So I'm sure some people are like, oh, you're recommending a Marxist. Yes, I am. He's an excellent writer. Even if you don't agree with his Marxism, you should absolutely read Inventing Reality. It's like the much, much, much better version of the book that people are more familiar with called Manufacturing Consent. I'm trying to remember. Even I knew someone who studied this guy. I should know his freaking name. MIT scholar. He gets all this fame. Don't read his stuff. He's a shell. He's worked with the CIA before. He's one of these people who creates the fake left that people think he's in opposition to the empire, but he's really not. I mean, he's at MIT, which is usually in bed with the U.S. empire, although there are a few dissenting voices. God, I'll remember his name later. Don't read his books. Read Inventing Reality. Parenti did it first. Inventing Reality was written before Manufacturing Consent, and it's a much better book on the same topic. And it's more brutal and honest, too. The other guy sugarcoats it. So, yeah. I've only read excerpts of it. I have read other books by Parenti, so that's how I know he's more brutal and honest, because he's brutal and honest in all his books, and everyone has told me he's more brutal and honest. And I believe it because I've read several other books by Parenti, and it fits the mold of his writing. He doesn't pull his punches when it comes to talking about the many abuses of capitalism. I haven't upgraded. I said I was going to do this, and as the air war becomes more intense, it becomes more necessary. Shooting down better armored American aircraft. And you want to increase your air attack as enemy air defense goes up, so that the enemy fighter wings, their time to live doesn't get too great, so their pilots don't gain more experience levels, is one of the reasons. And because you don't want... If you're facing the Americans, they have way more oil than you. If the air war reaches a meta of a lot more planes on both sides, they're going to win because they have the oil. You want to keep it high intensity if you're some European country usually trying to win the air war against like the US or the UK. You want to go heavier on an attack that is strictly optimal for trade. They're going to shoot down more of your fighter, more of your ICs, but you're going to shoot down more of theirs. And it's going to be both sides will have fewer fighters in the end. And that's what you want, because you can keep that up oil-wise, and they can keep up a much higher you're the Allies, you want more armored fighters with higher defense. Whereas if you're any European Central Powers axis, you probably want higher air attack. Or you're the French fighting the Germans. There's a reason for that too. Shoot, I'm gonna have to cut this video. My ability to monitor the chat, I have it on a different device. It's running out of power. It's gonna have to end. So I hope you all enjoyed this. Weren't too bothered by my explaining the history of American politics to a viewer. I don't love the air defense in this. It's too low. Let's see. But I can't afford any more range reduction. This is pretty expensive, but it uses less aluminum. Shoot, weight exceeds thrust. Shoot. What can I cut weight-wise? Armament. This is gonna have to go back to heavy machine guns. Oh well. A fighter with a defense turret does okay. I was worried about the range. So I got rid of the armor plates. But let's see, it has non-strategic materials, and that was one design cost. And a defense turret instead of armor for higher range. But substantially greater cost. And now the defense is... Shoot. No, this needs to go back to armor plating. I'm just going to replace this with a defense turret. And I don't love the range, but at least it's less of a hit than armor plates would be. That's what it was. Sorry. 23.4 air defense, 70 air attack. And I can't afford the weight of... Oh no, I can. Now I can go back to cannons, which I really need. Okay, 77 air attack. It's got more agility. The Americans using like 40 agility aircraft. I'm not sure why it's so low. But certainly it's got more agility, and even if they deploy more agile stuff in the future, I think it's because they're not using 4X engines. I mean, level 4 engines yet. They are using advanced airframes, but I think they're using level 2 engines on them or something. Their MIO is also not as highly developed, so they will produce more agile aircraft in the future. Okay, so this has got advanced cannons. It's got non-strategic materials. So that's 2 air, and it's got a cannon instead of the drop tanks because it needs more air defense to offset the non-strategic. The range is substantially lower than the last one, but I can produce a lot more due to this. The Mark 7 will still remain in production though, because it has range, and range is important. Alright, well, I'm gonna have to cut this video. I hope you all enjoy this. Take care of each other. Be kind to yourselves, and may you always find a guiding star lead you on. Till next time, it's Northstar. Adieu, and best luck to you all.